Hello and good evening. I thought I would jump on here to see if anyone is interested in doing an open discussion / Q&A. I just posted a video within the last hour or so. This seems to be getting a little bit of feedback, so we can further discuss that if you guys would like. But really, this time is just open for you guys to ask questions. So in chat, please feel free to ask something, or if you don't want to put it in chat, put a comment on another video and I will get the notification on my phone and I can read that. But this is really just time for you guys. So it's been a while since I've done one of these, and it's up to you guys. So I'm just going to wait until I get some questions, and then I can answer those, or I can address some of the ones that I've been getting. But yes, please feel free to type your question in chat and I will answer it to the best of my ability. I just did a video earlier tonight about making sure that we keep our rapture conversations in perspective. One of the comments I got on that was talking about hope deferred and how rough that is on everyone. And this is it follows a cycle of emotional highs and lows, which is never good for stability and peace. And so that's the one reason why I don't try to harp on it, but I do try to bring it up, is just for the sake of people's sanity and literally their emotional health, because I do care about that. But it's not about being right. It's about emotional stability and peace. And I'm sorry, but having personally been on the emotional high and low cycle of maybe this day, maybe this day, maybe this day, it's like, no, time to get off that roller coaster. If you are truly seeking answers, they are there to be found. And if you just want to give yourself short-term hope, so you keep looking toward the next short-term day, that's a different story that I cannot help you with. Hi, Look Up. Welcome. Does the month of Nissan float around our calendar like when it lands every year? It does. And that's because the Jewish calendar has, so our 365-day calendar is based on not exactly the same thing that the Jewish calendar is based on. Once upon a time, when it was established, the Jewish calendar was 30 days times 12, even 365 days every year. Our calendar is 365, and every fourth year we add a leap day. So there's always going to be a little bit of difference, and because of that, I believe it's, I'm not even sure how often it is, but every so often, because of the different amount of days and because of how it was determined in the Bible to establish the month of Nisan, and it all went back to the barley. Because of that, and because of the dissimilarity in the number of days, their calendar is different from ours as to the number of days per month, in so much as they actually add an extra month to their calendar every so often. And really that goes back to the barley, Abib. In the Bible, it is called the month of Nisan in certain places, but it was established technically in Exodus as the month of Abib. Abib relates specifically to the barley. When the barley was Abib, then they would, on the next new moon, establish the month of Nisan, because it was all predicated upon the feast cycles, and having enough barley to harvest for the first fruits offering, which happened on Nissan 17. So if the barley was not Abib, and they would send people out to the field to check it several days before the start of the new moon, which would be at the end of the 12th month, which would be for the start of the first month of the next year. If there was not enough barley Abib at that time to where they could harvest enough for the first fruits offering 2.5 weeks later, they would add the 13th month, delay the start of the year until the barley was in a state for harvest so that they could have that first fruits offering. So it all went back to the barley for the purpose of offering the first fruits on Nissan 17. So it does float around our calendar because they don't have the same number of days in theirs as we do in ours. But it also depends on when that would fall time of year wise, because if it's early in March, then it's not gonna be ripe enough. Late March, early April, you're probably not going to run into a problem. But if the beginning of the month of Nissan falls early enough in the month of March and the barley is not ripe enough, then they would add that extra month for that purpose. But it literally all goes to the first fruits offering. When you look at that, taking that into the New Testament, what happened on the 17th day of the month of Nisan? Jesus rose from the grave. So clearly, first fruits was extraordinarily important in the Old Testament, forward looking to what would be accomplished on first fruits in the future, which would be the resurrection of Christ. So eternally grateful. Hi, you're welcome. So that was a good question. And yes, that is why it does float around our calendar, because it's not based on the same things. We just even our months aren't standard. I mean, they are standardized, but like we know how many days each month has, but they're not standard as in they're all 30 days times 12. Some have less, some have more. And there's February with 28, which is just weird. But yeah, theirs are all based on the lunar cycles. But the declaration of the first month was always regarding the barley. And that's how you know that the Exodus took place in surrounding the month of Nisan, was because there was a plague that was specifically related to the state of the barley being Abib, the locust eating the crops. And it was the crops were in a pre-harvest status. And that's actually where you start to see talk of the Abib and the barley and things like that, was with the plagues in Egypt. Because of the time of the year, which was just pre-Passover. So, and Passover being 3 days before first fruits. So that was all, the timing of that was all very similar. And then when you start getting into some of the books of history, or some of the books of history, it's actually referred to the month of Nisan. Specifically, I'm thinking of Nehemiah, where he approaches Artaxerxes, tearful that the city of his father's sepulchres lies waste, and he is asking to go build it. It was in the month of Nisan, specifically stated in Nehemiah 2, which is the command to go forth and rebuild Jerusalem per Daniel's prophecy in Daniel 9. It was the going forth of the command to restore and to build Jerusalem, the beginning of the first 69 weeks of years. Agnostic theist. Hello, welcome. Do we bash Jehovah's Witnesses here? I don't bash anyone. If you're going to ask me what they believe and try to compare it to what I believe, I have not the slightest clue what they believe. I don't bash anyone. So yeah, I'm not sure what you mean. But good question, look up. Does anyone have anything else for me to talk about? I don't think there are any outstanding questions that I have gotten recently. Let me take a peek through some of my comments to see if there's anything there that I could bring up. Oh, one of the things that was just mentioned, commented on the video that I just did about the rapture, was talking about it, all of these signs pointing to essentially nothing. And we do have a very strange idea, probably because we hear so many people say this constantly. The signs are all around us. Look at the signs. Signs of the times, all of that. And I honestly have yet to hear a coherent argument from anyone, and that's not to say that there isn't one. I just have not encountered this, to tell me what these supposed signs around us are and where they come from in the Bible, telling us that we are able to see signs of the times. The ones that people typically look at, the generalizing, comes from Matthew 24, which are technically seal judgment 70th week specific. Yes, we have always seen antichrists. Yes, we have always seen wars and famines and pestilences. Yes, we have always seen martyrdom. Yes, we have always seen natural disasters, earthquakes, that kind of thing. But the ones that he is specifically telling them to watch for are the seal judgments that will pertain directly to the 70th week. I literally do not know what specific signs people are talking about other than that would give us some indication that the rapture is close, because that's what people are actually looking for. And he said it's depressing. It is. It is. When people generalize what is meant to be specific and completely take it out of context, apply it to a time period it does not actually apply to, and then they're saying we're seeing these things. No, we're not, because he wasn't talking about general things. He was talking about specific things. We're not in that time period. Therefore, they do not apply. And it is depressing, because when people believe that it is a general statement rather than something specific that doesn't pertain to us, and they think we're seeing these things, there are a bunch of signs that lead to nothing, that get you no closer to any answers. Because if they've always been happening, then they are legitimately signs for nothing. If it's always been that way, then you could not legitimately use that for a sign to predict the future or foretell or tell you how close you are to anything. If they hadn't always been happening and they were only supposed to happen at a specific time, then maybe you could get closer to that. But if they've always been happening, then you're no closer to an answer than when you started. This is the problem with generalizing what is meant to be specific, is that you lose all context and there's no rational argument for anything. And it doesn't get people any closer to the answers that they seek. And that's really what is disheartening about it, is that people legitimately want answers, but they're trying to gain said answers by things that are taken out of context. And typically when you take things out of context, you're not going to get led to the right answer. So I'm very, very big on contextual accuracy. That means that some of the stuff I say people aren't going to like, because it's not telling what they want to hear. But I do believe that there is much more peace to be gained from a straight answer, even if it's not what you want to hear. Because then you can make your peace with it and move on and like live your life without having to sit there and wonder and wait and worry and speculate constantly. I just don't believe that provides any kind of peaceful existence, is the constant speculation and the emotional highs and lows and all of that. Like, if you really want an answer, then seek it out with the understanding that you might find something contrary to what you thought. You might find something contrary to what you wanted to say. But that's also, when you're studying, your feelings don't factor in. You should never have a preconceived idea or a pre-existing feeling. Read the text and then figure out afterward. But yeah, people don't go into it with expectation, because then you're probably going to misinterpret or reinterpret. There's a higher likelihood of that. is just read it and then feel how you want to feel after that. But don't feel a certain way beforehand and then read it, because you're just going to, probably just start reinterpreting a whole bunch of stuff. And as I believe it was Chuck Missler said, when the plain text makes perfect sense, seek no other sense. The answers are probably there. You just gotta kind of find them. But the good thing about that is there are a lot of research tools. There are concordances and word studies. There are a whole lot of, you can click on words on some of these websites and it'll tell you what they mean and where they're located in the Bible. You can do comparison studies and you can do interlinear studies between the Old Testament and the New Testament. There are so many reference tools that we have available to us that we should not be so far out of alignment with some of the understandings that we have as we are because there are so many reference tools available. And I think it's just easier to accept some of these broad interpretations. I don't know. That's just me. But does anyone have anything else? Let me check these. I'll be going through the book of Ephesians and the letter to the church of Ephesus in the very near future, dovetailing off of Acts 18 and 19. And it's kind of funny, kind of ironic, not funny, but it's ironic that, and it kind of seems this way with some of the doctrines that are out there being, kind of perpetuated right now. In Acts 19, when Paul and his missionary team go to Ephesus and they're telling people to turn from their idols to serve the living God, that might have had a different impact in other cities than it did in Ephesus, because Ephesus, and I did write about this when I originally wrote about the letter to the church of Ephesus, but Ephesus was a port city, and it was the home to one of the seven wonders of the ancient world, which was the temple of Artemis at Ephesus. It was this massive pagan structure with like multiple different temples and like 7 different altars. It was massive, absolutely massive. And these people, Paul and his missionary team, go there and they're like, yeah, just kind of disregard your massive 7th wonder of the ancient, or one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Just disregard this and follow God. Well, Demetrius, one of the silversmiths who actually made statues of the, made silver like idols for them to worship of the goddess Artemis or Diana. He's like, you're going to bankrupt us. If everybody does what you're telling them to do and like forsake their pagan gods and stop worshiping Artemis, Diana, whatever she's called, Diana in the King James, then you're essentially going to put all of us out of business. So could you quit? And he's like, well, you could find something else to do. You don't have to do that for work. But that's kind of like the hardship of teaching the truth among people who have built their livelihood around lies. And in kind of a little bit of similarity to what we encounter with these massive amounts of people in the church who believe these massively wrong things, it's very difficult to change thought processes and to change ideas when people are so dead set in it, and they would feel a loss if they could not continue in that belief system. The cognitive dissonance would be too great for them to be able to continue on. Like, what do I do now? If I were to change my mindset, what am I supposed to do now? This is the vicious cycle of the rapture chasing these date after date after date after date. If you had a hard date, what would you do with all the time that you devote to rapture chasing right now? Demetrius in Acts, what would we do if you put us out of business? If you put us out of business because everyone changed their minds and stopped worshiping her, what would we do? And the sad thing about that is you can bring this over to the church, the same idea. All these people rapture chasing because they want it to happen now, but they're unwilling to listen to a bit more sound doctrine about this, because if they had a hard answer and they knew, what would you do with the rest of your time that you spend on all of these forums and all of these questions with this groupthink mentality, chasing after your tails? What would you do? You'd be at a complete loss. So it's almost more worthwhile to not know, to say you want to know, but not actually want to know, because then what would you do with that time? You'd literally have to shut down forums, because what would there be to talk about? What next feast day would there be to talk about? And that's kind of for me, that's kind of the depressing thing, and why I will never put my stuff out there on, main forums and stuff like that, because it is met with such derision, because people don't actually want to know, because it would force them to do something else. And when you've made a lifestyle out of chasing after dates after dates after dates and trying to make sense of which feast date could it be, that's just not going to work for you. It's just not going to work for you. Why people hang on to some of these ideas, no man knows the day or the hour, or it could happen at any time. I still would like someone to tell me what it actually means to watch. To you, what does it mean to watch and be ready? Because I'm ready. I used to. It was funny, because when I first started out with this, it was August of 2012, right around the Feast of the Trumpets time. And the first person I was researching, rapture theories just on Google or whatever. And the first person that came up was Scotty Clark about the Feast of Trumpets stuff. And do you know, I got so excited about that, because I thought, oh my goodness, I just got interested now. And he's saying it could happen on this Feast of Trumpets, which, it's September time, and it was August. And I'm like, I literally sat outside, or sat at my desk watching the sky outside that whole day of whatever day the Feast of Trumpets was, because I thought I was supposed to watch for it. Now, several years later, I kind of laugh at myself, because it's I do believe that people have that understanding of what it means to watch. You're literally supposed to have your eyes pointed at the sky so you don't miss it. You could miss it. The Lord would have you miss out on that event if your eyes were not pointed skyward, watching him in the clouds for this event that you probably wouldn't even be able to see from Earth anyway. If you aren't watching and waiting and pinpoint that day with sure accuracy, he's going to just skip out on you. And I do believe that there are probably a good number of people in the rapture watching community that actually think that. And so that's why, in combination with thinking that there is some kind of reward that they're going to get for doing that, because, I fought the good fight. I finished my course. I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day. And not to me only, but unto all them also who love his appearing. Well, what appearing was he actually talking about? If you go to the first verse in that chapter, it says, at his appearing and his kingdom. It's the second coming. Loving his appearing is not loving the rapture, and it's not watching for that. And to be honest, if you have to watch for something, you're not demonstrating faith. Watching for signs is the opposite of waiting patiently by faith. We're called to wait patiently by faith. And that's specifically what Paul says, I have kept the faith. The faith part of that is that you're going to go, you're not going to be left out. Your eyes don't need to be pointed to the sky. His Spirit's in you. He very clearly is able to separate the righteous from the wicked. You're good. You're going to go. He's going to include you. You're not going to miss out. And it does not illustrate a high degree of faithfulness if you believe that you actually have to watch. Like he wouldn't include you if you aren't sitting there waiting for him at that precise moment. Or it, on the flip side, and the worst case scenario, it just demonstrates a level of egocentricity that you're just so focused on that reward that you can't think of anything else. It's a crown. You're going to get lots of them. I guarantee you that every single one of us is going to have way more rewards than we would have ever thought possible. And it's all based on faith. Have faith that you're going to go. You don't need to have the day precisely pinpointed. He's not going to leave you out. He's not going to exclude you. And he's certainly not going to leave rewards behind. There's just no peace in this. My hope for all of you is just to be at peace, however that winds up being. In whatever study you do, whatever floats your boat, just my hope and my wish for all of you is for peace. For peace. But yeah, look, I said the love of money. Yeah, going back to Acts 19, the love of money, what people will do for money. Yep. A lot. The love of money is the root of all evil, not money itself. Money itself is just a means to an end. Just a means to an end. It's a means to get what you actually want. It is not the end of anything, not the end all be all of anything. It is just the means with which to obtain what you actually do want and need. It should not actually be the focus of anything, because it in and of itself doesn't do anything. Just sitting around. But yeah, it's very interesting. So I'll be going through the letter to the church of Ephesus. And well, I'll go through Acts 18, the rest of Acts 18 and the chapter of Acts 19. And then I will go through the letter to the church of Ephesus in that same video. And then we'll get into the book of Ephesians, because the letter to the church of Ephesus is very closely linked to, and I hadn't realized it at the time that I wrote about that, although I did write about the same things after the fact, but I didn't write about it from the perspective of it actually being in Acts 19, because I didn't know that it was, which is why I tabled the writing until I finished the book of Acts, because there seems to be way more than I bargained for in the book of Acts, which has been wonderful because I have learned much. So I tabled the writing until I get through that book. Because it's been a fun journey. But I think after Acts 19 and Ephesians, then he does mention Romans, but I think after that, I'm just going to finish out the book of Acts. And then I will hit on the things that I did not talk about on the journey through that book, like Romans and 2 Corinthians. Colossians, Titus and Philemon, And then I think, with the exception of the Gospels, I will have gone through everything else in the New Testament. So it's been cool. It's been a fun journey. Learned a lot. So I like learning. It's fun. I shall endeavor to continue until God takes my brain away, my ability to think. But anyway, interesting things coming up and all that jazz. So, anyone else? I try to keep up on answering things as they come up. Oh, for those of you who are still here, starting on December 31st and continuing on to January 1st, and depending on how quickly I can get through it, because let's just say that my study of the book of Revelation is ever evolving. So the more study I do and the more I write, the longer I can talk about it. So the first time I went through the book of Revelation, I probably did it in 9 hours, maybe. The second time was longer, maybe 11 or 12. I will guarantee it's going to take me a lot longer to get through that book this time. I don't know how much longer, but it's going to take me a while. But that is going to be how we start this new year. So my goal is to go through Acts 18, 19, letter to the church of Ephesus, then Ephesians, then finish the book of Acts, and then I will update whatever I need to update from having written about the letter to the church of Ephesus in my expositional study of the book of Revelation. And then, depending on how long that takes me, I may or may not be able to finish the letter to the church of Thyatira. And then, starting on December 31st through that weekend, New Year's, I will be going through on YouTube an entire expositional study of the book of Revelation. We're going to do it that whole weekend. We're going to get through it. So that's how I'm going to ring in the new year. So it's going to be live streams. I don't know that any of it will be pre-recorded. I'm just going to go live and just talk for hours and hours and hours and hours and go through the entire book of Revelation. In setup for that, I have posted some videos that have been brought to my attention that I forgot that I had, which God is so awesome like that. He'll have people watch stuff and comment on it, bring it to my attention, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I have that. I'll go back and listen to it. There were a couple that I posted recently about Revelation 21 and New Jerusalem, talking about the first two stones listed in the foundation, which are the jasper and the sapphire, which are very important aspects to other things that are talked about in the Bible. So I had totally forgotten about those, and I went and listened to them and just kind of brushed up on that. And I have other videos like who are the 24 elders and things like that. So it will definitely be long, but I do believe for myself it will be worthwhile. Hopefully for you guys it will too. For myself it will be, since I'm writing out the entire expositional study of the book of Revelation. So I will get to brainstorm and talk it out so that I can use it to write from and hopefully get that done sooner rather than later. But that's the big thing I'm working on, is the expositional written study of the book of Revelation. So before I proceed further, I'm going to actually do a YouTube live of the whole book of Revelation and an expositional study of it. And then I will do a written form to follow, which is in progress. And I will hopefully be able to make significantly more progress. But I wanted to do the book of Acts first, and then just kind of tangent to that, the corresponding epistles and things like that. So there's a lot coming up. But I would encourage you guys, if you have interest in the book of Revelation, to be present for those. and then ask whatever questions you have corresponding to them. I will try to answer them at the same time. We'll go quickly, but we will go thoroughly. So that should be fun. But I do invite you guys all to be there and all of that fun stuff. So if there is nothing else, I will say thank you to those guys, to those of you who are here, to those watching after the fact. And if you have any other questions, comments, all that jazz, please leave it in comments and I will address things as they come up. But that is what is in the works for now. Lots to come. And as always, I appreciate all of you. So have a wonderful evening. I'll see you later.